Machine Design's Workers in Science and Engineering Hub compiles coverage about workplace issues that affect the engineering field. So, when two nonprofit public private partnerships decided to work together to accelerate the development of advanced manufacturing and talent across the Sunshine State, we wanted to know more. Joining us today are Kevin Carr, CEO at Florida Makes, the official representative of the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or MEP, National Network, and National Institutes of Science and Technology, and Joe Steele from LIFT, the DoD-supported National Advanced Materials Manufacturing Innovation Institute. Thank you both for being here. So for the folks out there watching, why don't each of you tell us a little bit about your associations? I'll start with you, Kevin.
Sure. Florida Makes, as you introduced, is one of the national MEP centers. There's one in every state. They've been operating, actually, they were put into law back in 1988. So they've been operating, many centers out there have been operating since 1989. But Florida Makes has only been around for 10 years. It's actually the second center that was funded down in Florida. And so we were funded back in 2015. And our mission is really to strengthen and advance Florida's manufacturing economy. And we do that through technology, we do that through workforce, we do that through growth. Florida isn't often recognized as a sort of a manufacturing hub, but it's becoming a manufacturing hub. It's much to even surprise of people in Florida, it's become a manufacturing hub. So our presence here is very timely. This partnership is very timely because some of the challenges that we face are major technical challenges, not just unique to Florida, but across the entire industry. So that's kind of the business we're in. We work through manufacturing associations across the state, so we're in every corner. It's a very long state. It's about 14 hours long if you're driving. So it's a lot of area to cover, but we're focusing in on those manufacturing firms, in particular the smaller ones. Most of our firms are under 20 employees. 80% of our firms are under 20 employees. So we're a large aggregation, about 27,000 manufacturing establishments strong, but a vast majority of them are very small companies. They're part of that supply base. They feed the larger manufacturing system. So America's foundation.
Great, thank you. And Joe, why don't you tell us about LIFT and your role there?
Sure. Thank you, and thanks again for taking the time to speak with us today. So LIFT, as you mentioned, is one of the Department of Defense National Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. We too are celebrating our 10th birthday. There are 17 of these National Manufacturing Innovation Institutes around the country, and the network itself is celebrating its 10th anniversary at the same time. So we're the third oldest of the Manufacturing USA institutes. So our focus, much like Florida Makes, is to focus on accelerating technology into the marketplace and making sure the advanced manufacturing workforce is healthy and robust, and that people have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to work on those technologies when they do enter the marketplace. So we're a nonprofit public-private partnership based here in Detroit. And we've been here in Detroit for the last 10 years, but we've been taking a look around the country of where else can we have a similar impact that we've had here in the Motor City in our region around here. And Florida certainly popped up, as Kevin mentioned, as a manufacturing opportunistic state. There's a lot of opportunities down there for manufacturers and for an organization like ours. Now, of the 17 National Manufacturing Innovation Institutes, all of us focus on different technology areas. Ours at LIFT is advanced materials and manufacturing processes and systems engineering. So what industry wants to make in the future, what the Department of Defense wants to make in the future, we work with them to figure out how to make it and what to make it out of, and then work with organizations like Kevin's, who are in Florida Makes, who are closer to the actual producers, the actual manufacturers who are producing these products. Work with them to get these technologies into the marketplace. So that's where the connectivity can we think will happen and reap benefits for the manufacturing base in the Sunshine State.
Great. So in what ways do you think that the partnership will directly benefit mechanical and design engineers who are working in the sector down here in Florida?
As a National Manufacturing Innovation Institute, we have an ecosystem that is national. So anybody in Florida that is part of Florida Makes or in the manufacturing industrial base in the state of Florida, by joining LIFT, by joining Florida Makes, we have the opportunity to work with them and help them accelerate their technologies into commercialization. We know that, and hopefully Kevin would agree, that most of the innovation happens with small and medium-sized manufacturers. And we work with a lot of big manufacturers as well, but we run the gamut from the 1 and 2 person organizations all the way up to large multinational OEMs, and we think by having that connectivity to an organization like ours that has reach into Washington D.C., reach across the nation, can help have a positive impact on those manufacturers by accelerating their technologies into the marketplace.
Oh, yeah, the only thing I would add to that is, you know, particularly when we start talking about small manufacturers, they become challenged with having the bandwidth within their organization to understand where, you know, not only where the market's moving, but where technology is moving. So when you begin to look at some of the things that are the subject of the work, you talk about the material technologies, but you also talked about some of the process technologies. You know, the whole marketplace is getting more and more digitally based, more and more dependent on, you know, your ability to exploit some of your production data. That's big to the big companies. The little companies are just beginning to figure out how to wrap their head around it and beginning to see that requirement come down to them. So, you know, having access to a Florida Makes and then having access beyond that to one of the national manufacturing institutes, in this case, LIFT, helps them enhance their bandwidth. You know, they're not going to have, you know, the kind of folks that Joe has working in their facilities, many of these companies. So they have to have access through partnerships, through networks like this, to that kind of technology, to that kind of know-how.
How do those working in the field, in the manufacturing sector, how do they get involved with this? How will they learn, other than, you know, interviews like this, how will they learn about this satellite office and the fact that Florida Makes is there for them?
I'll take a stab at that first. One of the reasons we wanted to partnership and are very excited about the partnership Florida Makes is because they have connections to all those manufacturers in the state of Florida that we don't necessarily have right off the bat. So we have some team members that are living and working down in Florida right now, but that's a small group. So the way that we can reach out to more of those manufacturers through organizations like Florida Makes, so has a multiplier effect. So working together with Kevin and his team, we'll be able to spread the word about what's going on in the state of Florida through conversations like this. Thank you very much. We'll be able to spread the word about what's going on in Florida as well. And then we have had one, and we plan on having more sessions where we bring industry, academia, and government together to have conversations about what do we need from each other and how can we as an organization best benefit them going forward. So we plan on having more of those across the state as well. So multi-pronged approach with having some folks on the ground, working with associations like Kevin's, and then doing our own kind of connecting and convening on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of how we get to small companies is not like what we're doing here, putting information out there, but then through our network, you know, we're connected to these manufacturing associations, and beyond that into economic development and workforce and even the, you know, the academic community. And so, you know, organizations like LIFT, these institutes are putting on webinars and things like that, you know, monthly, if not bi-weekly, and to begin to kind of redirect and reconnect some of that activity to the marketplace that we're serving. That gives them exposure. I mean, a lot of this begins with outreach. It begins with learning. And then, you know, it's the follow-up to facilities. And companies, if they're, if they're interested and driven enough by what they're learning through some of that outreach, they'll get on a plane and go to Detroit if they need to. That might actually be easier from Orlando to get to Detroit than Pensacola, but
we've already hosted a couple people we had a contingent from Florida a month or so ago come up here and see our facilities so they could see kind of what might be in store for them in Florida as well.
But if you don't know if you don't know if it's there, you don't know to look.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that we try to do in Florida as part of being an MEP here is not just talk about, the few things that we could do for you, but to also try to optimize the manufacturing ecosystem that these manufacturers are operating in, and Lyft coming here, establishing a presence, establishing a partnership, just enhances that ecosystem.
The collaboration expanded to include the opening of a new facility in Puerto Rico. Is that right?
So we announced we opened a facility in Puerto Rico, a satellite facility in Puerto Rico earlier this year, and with the similar intentions of what we have our eyes on in the Pensacola region, which is a satellite facility to advance technology and to support the education workforce development. A little bit unique because it's on an island in Puerto Rico, but the same kind of intent. And we're undergoing the similar kind of process, which is how, talking to manufacturers down there. How can we help you? What is the word on the street, the voice of the customer down there? We know that education workforce development is key down there. Some of our education workforce development programs that lines out the door for welding training, for example. So similar. I'll just say it's a similar activity because again, we as an institute, as we reached our 10th anniversary, said where else around the country can we have a similar impact? And Puerto Rico is one of those places, and Florida is one of those places as well.